Okay, I think we may as well start now. We have
Okay.
a great number of people, so that's good. And it's being recorded, folks, so it'll be available later to anyone who can't join us. If you could all be on mute, please, while Deborah is speaking to us.
Okay, shall I go?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for showing up online for my little talk. My full name is Ruth Deborah Lynn Edwards, and I use my baptismal name, Deborah. Just a little bit about me. I'm 62. I live in West Wales. I'm married, and I've had my Presbytera training wheels on for a mere 3.5 months. When my husband of nearly 28 years was priested in Birmingham in August. I was born in Crickhowell in South Wales. I was adopted as a newborn, and I was raised and schooled in South Wales near Port Talbot. I trained in medicine in Cardiff and then in psychiatry in Nottingham and Oxford from 88 to 98. And then I took a maternity break to care for my 2 small sons, who are now in their mid to late 20s. After that, we moved to West Wales, and in 2003, I started working as a community psychiatrist with a mental health team, and I stopped doing that at the end of 2018. And since then, I've been semi-retired, and I work in a kind of consulting role, which mainly involves supporting the care of women at the very severe and forensic end of the mental health spectrum, who often need secure care to meet their needs. So for anyone who's not clear, because most people are, but not everyone is, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor who specialises in the diagnosis and the treatment of mental disorder. And in our day-to-day work, most jobbing psychiatrists work towards diagnosing mental disorders, and then together with the multidisciplinary team, formulating what we call a biopsychosocial treatment plan. So bio refers to physical treatments such as medication, electroconvulsive treatments, and so on. Psycho refers to psychological treatments such as cognitive behaviour therapy. And social refers to social interventions, which may be as simple as helping someone to regain confidence to go shopping or something, or maybe joining social groups to build on social skills, or anything really to improve somebody's social functioning and integration. So I'm grateful for you turning up tonight for this talk, which I've been kind of incubating for years. I like generally to give talks on things that I've been musing on, things that strike me as interesting, not things that I consider myself an expert. So I'd really like you to note the title is looks at the miracles of Jesus, not analyses or explains or interprets. I do have a bugbear with the modern habit of sort of explaining away things or assuming that our particular temporal standpoint is definitive. As anyone does, I see the world through a particular set of lenses. And of course, I'm not saying that mine are particularly enlightened, they're particular to me. But I have in recent years, since my work has focused more and more on complex trauma, found myself really noticing things in the gospel accounts of Jesus' miracles from a psychiatric perspective. And it both fascinates and delights me that sometimes things which are being taught as kind of cutting edge in psychological therapies are really implicitly present in Jesus' dealings with people all those years ago. But then again, of course, we shouldn't really be surprised at that. So back to the miracles then. I found, as I heard it again and again, these stories, so well known to many of us from childhood, that I started getting a sort of, oh, that's interesting response. And I'd like to share some of these thoughts with you tonight and see what you think, because often answering people's questions is the biggest stimulus to a better understanding. I would just like to say also, as a kind of disclaimer at the start, that I don't think any of these miracles map exactly onto the psychiatric phenomena that I'm describing. It's just that they've prompted me to think about certain things. So I don't want you to think that I'm saying that this is exactly a case of, miracle A is a case of condition B and so on. I'm not saying that. Anyway, psychotherapists talk about the doing to and the being with. Doing to is the thing that you do to fix a problem, and it might be as simple as giving a pill. Both are important, but what researchers have found, and is everyday experience, is often it's the manner of being with that makes the difference as to whether a particular therapy will work or not. And often also whether how well a particular therapy will work. Being with means to be alongside someone, to understand them, and as you encourage and exhort a person in their own healing process. At its best, it's absolutely a whole person, body, mind, and spirit phenomenon, and it's been referred to as a therapeutic presence. And this is what strikes me. And I'd like to share some thoughts with you today, not so much as, an expert, remote, wise observer, but more like an awed child, really, sort of peeping over a wall and saying, wow, did you notice that? Okay, so by definition, a miracle effects something that isn't explicable within or which defies the laws of nature, the usual behaviours of matter and of flesh. According to a basic internet search, Jesus performed 37 miracles, and these are categorised in terms of the doing to. So they include miracles of healing, miracles of authority over nature, for example, calming the storm, or over materials, for example, changing water into wine. You won't be surprised that with the interpersonal focus that I described earlier, I'm going to concentrate on some of the healing miracles. And I've had to select just a few, obviously, because of time limitations and to be able to reflect adequately on each one. So I'm going to focus on a number of the healing miracles, and particularly on aspects of Jesus being with the person who is healed, rather than the doing to as such. So the miracles I look at will involve those where he had proximity with and interaction with the people, with the person he healed. Okay, so this is where the tech fun starts. I hope Melange is ready. The first miracle I'd like to consider is the healing of the Gadarene demoniac. And I have prepared a video. We have already had a bit of a tech hitch, so we're hoping this will work now. And that, oh, I can share it now, can't I, Melange? I can
share it, yes.
Did you say? Right, here we go. Hold on to your seats. Are you still there?
We are. Yes, I can see.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me!" But Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you."
Did that work?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right. So Jesus found this man sitting in a graveyard and cutting himself with stone. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Camera's off. Don't know where. Oh. Hi. So Jesus found this man sitting in a graveyard cutting himself with stones. He was, amongst other things, he was a biblical age self-harmer. The first thing that strikes me is how modern this scene seems. It would be very easy to imagine a modern day person sitting in a graveyard cutting themselves. A lot of my work involves people who habitually, frequently, and severely self-harm. For years, I used to encounter these people in on-call situations, maybe in the wee small hours in casualty departments. And certain of these people you encounter have a really vehement and relentless drive to self-harm or self-destruct. And there's often a real darkness around this. And I started to ask people who presented in this way, in this really severe way, just as part of a general history, whether they'd ever dabbled with or been exposed to occult. And it struck me how many of them would say that they had. In very severe self-harmers, you often do see a real preoccupation with death, a fascination with decay, with horror movies, true crime, and so on. So this man's self-harming in the company of the dead rings really true to me. We know the story about how Jesus addresses and deals with the demons by sending them into the swine, and exorcism really isn't within my area of expertise, and I don't question it. But this results in the man recovering his right mind. And it's interesting that people are actually afraid by the nature and extent of his recovery. And I would say that we don't see recoveries of that quality generally in mental health. I've seen people who've had transformative experiences with God in retreats and things, and they say afterwards, oh, maybe it wasn't really God, maybe it was just, it helped with my nerves kind of thing. And I've said, no, we don't see that quality of transformation in secular care. There was something of God in that change. But anyway, the other thing that strikes me is what comes next. Sometimes when Jesus encounters somebody, he ends the initial encounter by saying, come, follow me, or the person just follows him. But when this man asks to stay with Jesus, Jesus says, no, go back to your friends and tell them. Now, people who habitually and severely self-harm often have very severe and unstable relationships. They can blow very hot, then very cold on a hair trigger, and they can cause a lot of distress and perplexity in those who love them and want to be close to them. And I do wonder whether Jesus sent this man back to heal and to be further healed within his relationships, friendships that had perhaps been stretched beyond their limits by his behaviours. Such people often suffer from a really profound emptiness and purposelessness, so that other people can find them draining, and they can focus on their own needs and hurts and undermine a necessary day-to-day predictability of interactions, engendering feelings of deep and exhausted futility in others. I find it really interesting that Jesus sent this man back to his friends to share good news. He had the opportunity to heal his relationships by sharing his own experience of profound blessing and healing, perhaps to refill with joy those that he'd previously drained and exhausted. And I think that surely such a profound and qualitative transformation would have spread the joy and the healing of the good news of Jesus beyond this man himself. Okay, so the second miracle that I'd like to reflect on with you is that of the paralytic at the pool of Bethesda. And I will just, again, try and share this video with you. Ooh.
So the man went away and began
Sorry.
to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed.
This Black Friday gift is my favourite dentist hack to clean my retainers. If you wear a retainer every night like I do, you know how hard it is to keep.
After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred the water. Whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the waters was healed of whatever disease he had. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him,
"Do you want to be healed?"
The sick man answered him,
"Sir, I have no one to help me into the water when it's stirred up. And when I do get close, the others step down in front of me."
Jesus said to him,
"Get up, take up your mat, and walk."
and at once the man was healed. And he took up his bed and walked. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed,
"It's Shabbat. What are you doing? Transporting objects from one domain to another violates Shabbat."
The man healed
Do you
me.
not realize what just happened here? Why are you trying to make this about
He
Shabbat?
said to me, "Take up your bed and walk."
They asked him,
Who told you that?
He did. I don't know. He didn't tell me his name.
for Jesus had withdrawn, as there was a crowd in the place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him,
He told me to go and sin no more.
that nothing worse may happen to you. The man went away.
Right, I'm back. So, you'll be familiar with this man who had sat there for 38 years paralysed. And you'd think, well, surely he'd want to just walk off and get on with whatever life he had left. Now, on looking at the Greek for infirmity, which is the word used for his paralysis illness, the Greek word is asthenia, which means like a weakness. Now, when I started training in psychiatry, we used to use we had a condition called neurasthenia, which was a chronic state of sort of low energy, low mood, low motivation, perhaps with aches and pains. Now, I'm interested in Jesus' question to this man because he seems to be addressing the man's relationship with his illness. Sociologists talk about certain gains which might come with illness, the ability perhaps to abdicate a role or a task. Just to share with you at a simple level, I remember the overwhelming joy with which I succumbed to chicken pox on the day I was meant to do a piano solo in the school I studied for. There is a natural relief when if we've struggled to keep on and on going when we're ill, and we finally just go to bed, rest and stop striving. And it's wonderful when others take over for a time things which have been beyond us. But there can also be murkier and sometimes darker aspects to this spectrum. Some people are so attached to the so-called benefits of illness that they fake it completely and willfully in themselves, or even worse, in their children. In others, there is no attempt to consciously fake an illness, but the person's disability is deemed to be functional in that no physical cause can be found. I had a colleague years ago who did a study of people who were confined to wheelchairs, but who had no discernible actual physical pathology. When he looked more closely at their life histories, he found that many of them had performed from an early age and to an exhausting degree a role of caring for others. And it was as if they'd come to a point where their mind or their body had said, perhaps subconsciously, okay, it's my turn now. The sick role can relieve a person of drudgery or effort that they're not inclined to, and it can confer a specialness and an attention which would not otherwise be forthcoming. It can also afford control of others. One of my guilty pleasures is watching My £600 Life, where a morbidly obese person can tyrannize their family with demands for industrial quantities of junk food around the clock. And you'll know what I mean, but it cuts both ways, because more often than not, if the obese person does manage to lose a lot of weight, sometimes their spouse will go because it just tips the balance of the relationship beyond what is tolerable. So it does suggest a two-way benefit from the pathology. At a even more mysterious level, a paralysis can protect a person from the fear of a forbidden action. Simplistically, a man consumed with a forbidden anger who wants to stab someone can develop a paralysed arm. Now, just for the record, I'm not saying that this guy didn't have an illness, and I'm not saying that he didn't want to be healed, but I just wonder if Jesus, in his questions, was addressing a kind of murkier element within his relationship with his pathology. And interestingly, when Jesus does heal him, he makes him do something active. He says, "You pick up your bed and walk." He makes him take an active part in his healing. And at the very end of the account, he bumps into the man and Jesus says, "Your sins are forgiven. Sin no more, lest something worse happens to you." And this implies to me again that perhaps there was quite a complex relationship between the man's paralysis, past sins, fear of future sins, and maybe the advantages, quote unquote, of sickness. But as the saying goes, God only knows. The third miracle I want to think on with you occurs contiguously with the fourth. And I'd like to look next at the raising of Jairus's daughter. And once again, I'll try and share that video with you.
Jesus! Stephen, I beg you to save my only daughter. Sir, have mercy. She's only 12 years old and dying. Please come with me.
Jairus, I'm sorry. Jesus! Your daughter is dying. Don't bother the teacher any longer.
Don't be afraid. Only believe and she will be well. Do not weep. She's not dead, but only sleeping. Child, arise. something to eat.
Okay. So, you know the story, of course, that Jairus' daughter had become sicker and sicker. And in desperation, this leader of the Jewish synagogue had gone to Jesus to ask if Jesus would heal her. It's time. And Jesus in this story almost seems perversely slow and relaxed about things. As he finally turns towards Jairus' house, servants run up to say that the girl has died, so not to bother Jesus anymore. But still, Jesus does go to the house and utters those beautiful words, Talitha Kumi, little girl, get up. And Jairus' daughter is raised. And what does he say next? Make her something to eat. He's said to say this in an authoritative tone, a commanding tone. And when I think of this scene, I think of this little girl becoming inexorably sicker with an accelerated decline, and no doubt money spent on the medical experts of the day who would have been found wanting, and people would have got more and more desperate. And then there was perhaps the controversial decision to go and seek Jesus, and then the agonizing wait for when he would turn up, with time slipping away as the little girl weakened unto death. And then a wave of despair breaking and inconsolable weeping and frustration, perhaps rowing and consternation that he hadn't gone, that Jairus hadn't gone earlier, or that it was pointless to go at all. But I do imagine a scene of really, really high emotion, weeping and rending of garments and so on. Any death of a beloved person is agony, but the death of a child must seem to be against nature, almost like an act of spite. And then Jesus comes too late. So then imagine the little girl wakes up, alive and healed, and Jesus says commandingly, make her something to eat. If she'd just come round after being very, very ill and then dead, she may well have been a little bit discombobulated. She may well have been hungry, and that would have been a really good sign and a joy. But commanding that she was given something to eat also would really have broken into the commotion that Jesus is kind of recorded in the scriptures as objecting to. It would have focused and it would have galvanized people. In biblical times, obviously, providing something to eat wouldn't have involved a quick call on your mobile to Deliveroo, or shifting something from Iceland from your freezer into your air fryer. It might have involved pouring, stirring, kneading, seasoning, and the preparation of so-called slow food in such a setting would really have provided a kind of meditative, mindful activity, counteracting this maelstrom of raw emotion. It would also have interrupted clinging behaviour and prompted intentional action rather than the paralysis of grief and shock, and therefore provided both nourishment for the young girl, but also it would have interrupted that sort of two-way mind-body neurological traffic, which would have perpetuated grief and chaos. Therapists in a subtype of cognitive therapy, which aims to address the more deep, murky and subtle problems, as opposed to, say, simple fears like being afraid of spiders or something, talk about people going into modes, which are sets of thoughts and behaviours which tend to go together. We use this a little colloquially. For example, we might say, I'm in panic mode. It can be useful therapeutically to interrupt these modes, and sometimes it's necessary. And I do wonder whether in part this is what Jesus was doing. An example from my own professional life is one of my very dear patients suffered from paranoia, and he was in a state of really severe paranoia, such that he'd started to hallucinate people, attackers surrounding his house. And also, he'd also in the past been the subject of a terrorist alert because of his propensity to phone up and make terrorist threats rather than just phoning a friend and saying, I'm a bit fed up. So alarm was raised that this gent was not well again, and he was seen to be dangerous. So we assembled at a nearby fire station with a truckload of armed police and made our way cautiously to his house. Now, I did know this person really well, and I had a very well-established, good and trusting relationship with him. So intuitively, I said, look, I'll go in first to his house. And when I got in, I said, look, I'm knackered. I've had a really busy morning. Can you make me a cup of coffee? I haven't had one for hours. And he says, yeah, of course. And happily sets about making me a coffee, immediately calmed down. And we were able to sit on the floor in his living room, have a cuppa together. And I was able to say, look, while you're there, why didn't you take something to calm you down a bit? I know you've been really, really stressed. And as the and he did so. And as the medication kicked in, he became much more biddable and relaxed. And we were able to transport him peaceably in a small hatchback, just two of us, to hospital. There's another similar story of interfering with modes, where a person was standing suicidal on a cliff edge, and negotiators hadn't had any luck persuading him to come down. But success was finally achieved when somebody said, oh, mate, can you move your car because it's blocking the road? And he said, oh, yeah, sure, and got off the cliff edge to move his vehicle, completely sort of snapped out of that intense suicidal mode. Okay, the last miracle I want to reflect on with you is one whose narrative is mixed with the story of the raising of Jairus's daughter. And in fact, the collision of this person's needs and the needs of Jairus, and how Jesus deals with this calmly, is really challenging to me, as generally I get irritable and muddled and make mistakes if lots of people are coming at me at once wanting different things. And this story, of course, is the one of the woman with the issue of blood. Now, this lady, as we know, had suffered from what sounds like a severe and chronic gynecological complaint for 12 years. She'd had no relief despite bankrupting herself with doctors. And whilst people are more open now about these kinds of personal issues, most of us have heard stories or experienced awful embarrassment around these things at some point in our lives. This lady's problems would have had a huge social cost. Without modern hygiene products and showers, etc., she would have been readily stigmatised in ways I needn't spell out. And that's before you even start on ritual uncleanness. She would have been ritually unclean, and therefore she was likely to have been shunned by others. And it's a common experience that associating with people who are undesirable can taint one with the same brush, leading to ostracism by association. So I do imagine that this lady was isolated, shunned, and tormented by shame. But let's see what happens when she manages to reach Jesus. I'd like to share with you a clip from the TV series The Chosen, which portrays this miracle so movingly. And I'll warn you now that I can't watch this clip without tearing up. Oh.
Deborah, the sound is not coming through.
Oh, sorry. I probably didn't press share sound. Sorry.
Everyone pressing gather up ahead, please. Let us through.
Everyone, right through.
Stay back, everyone.
Teacher! Teacher!
Our rabbi has a pressing gather ahead.
Teacher! No. Please, no. Not now. One thread. Just a fringe. One touch. One thread. Just the fringe. One touch. One thread. Just the edge. Only a thread.
You! I know you! Get away from him!
Stop it, please.
Rabbi Yusuf! This woman bleeds. She is unclean. We removed her.
Please. I promise I won't touch him. I just need to.
Woman, please, we can help you, but not now.
Sorry. Try tomorrow.
Oh, please, just a moment. Just
What's going on? What's wrong?
Who touched me?
Everybody back.
I asked the question. Who touched me?
Master, the crowds are pressing in all around you like this, and you're asking who touched you? They all have.
Someone touched me. I felt that power went out of me. Whoever touched me, come forward.
Teacher.
It was me. Just the fringe of your garment, only the edge, I promise. You are not unclean.
Why my garment?
I'm sorry. I know I should have asked. But if you touched me, it would make you ritually unclean according to the law. I was sick. I was sick for 12 years. I bled and no one could stop it. But I believed if I could just touch a piece of your garment. I was right. Thank you.
Who told you I could heal?
A man from the pool. And he was right. The blood has ceased.
My daughter.
I'm no one's daughter anymore.
Look up. Yes, you are. Daughter. It wasn't my piece of clothing that healed you.
But it was instant. I felt it right away.
I know, but it wasn't this. It was your faith.
Okay, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right. So, what this woman wanted were two things. She wanted a cure and she really wanted discretion. What she got was healing and exposure. And this used to trouble me. But I find this the most moving of Jesus' miracles for a number of reasons. I almost think that the cure of the physical ailment, whilst crucial, was the least of it. And what Jesus did that was arguably even more healing was that he dealt with her shame. Shame as an emotion can be divided into internal and external shame. Internal shame is a deep belief that you are fundamentally bad, unacceptable, and flawed. External shame is a perception that others see you as such, as bad, tainted, unacceptable, and so on. It's not like having a stain on your shirt. It's to feel completely saturated, permeated inside and out with a pollutant. And it pertains not just to how to something one does, but to something that one is. And it affects how you see yourself and how you know or imagine that others see you. In order to address this lady's problems, Jesus had to address her shame. We even see that in the shame emojis, where you've got the two hands over the face. In seeking her healing, this woman bent low, maybe even crawled along the ground, to touch a part of Jesus' garment that was probably dragging on the floor. And yet Jesus confounded her desperate wish to hide and seemingly exposed her publicly. Of course, he addressed the physical aspect of her problem, but he also announced to the crowd that she was healed and that she was clean, thereby addressing the problem of her reputation. But also addressing her social shame, because she knew that the master had told them all publicly that she was no longer what they had thought she was. More even than that, he affirmed her publicly by addressing her as daughter. Who knows, she may well have been disowned by her own. Lastly, he affirmed her faith. It was her faith that had made her reach out to him. And this might have been more than merely a compliment to her strength of belief. Her faith made her reach out on that day, but we don't know on how many previous occasions she'd reached out to others, only to be met with a slap or a slammed door. And those who meet rejection repeatedly learn to stop reaching out, even to fear and to despise the longings within them for connection and relationship with others. at worst, those natural and God-given longings can be discerned and exploited by the perverted and the unscrupulous. And Jesus, in his mending of her bleeding body and his loving and fatherly acceptance of her, his affirmation of her reaching out in faith, pronouncing her as clean, performed perhaps the fastest and the most profound miracle of biopsychosocial healing in our history. Glory to you, our God and our hope. Glory to you. So, in summary, we've looked at 4 miracles and at Jesus' way of being with these people while he did the doing too. I hope that the motto of our Royal College of Psychiatrists is let wisdom guide. And it's always imperative to seek wisdom when dealing with complex and murky situations. I'm reminded also of the Bible verse, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I hope that this little talk has contributed in a tiny way to your own store of wisdom. Thank you for listening. And if there's been anything in it that's troubled you, or that you don't agree with or whatever, please speak up and ask in the questions, which we can start now.
The floor is open. Stick a hand up if you want to ask a question, and don't forget to put your mic on. And of course, you would not have been allowed to worship.
No.
Either. You know, it wouldn't just have been her ordinary everyday life that was scuppered, but it was her worship
life
as well.
It would have been completely pervasive.
Everything.
There's a hand up, Hugh.
I don't understand why that
Hugh
is.
Maxfield, there's a hand up.
Go
Hugh.
for it.
It's me. It's not Hugh. It's just that the you know, we're quite old-fashioned, and the laptop is called Hugh Maxfield. It's not really a question. It's just appreciation for that beautiful meditation and mind expanding. Actually, it just makes me want to read the Gospels again. So with a slightly different lens. And yeah, thank you. That was really beautiful.
Oh, my privilege. Thank you.
I think you just made us all think, and that's why why there's no response. We're still taking it in.
No, I think there's a lot of room for really deep reflection. Myself, if I listen to something, I don't usually come up with a question for about 24 hours because I've got a percolating brain, not a sort of snappy brain.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. That was very inspiring.
I suppose then, if everyone is satisfied with everything that they have heard and don't have any questions, you can always send some questions in later. And I'm sure that Presbytera Diaconissa Deborah will be very, very... No, Presbytera.
Yes.
See, I'm confused. We'll be happy to answer them by email or message or some such.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You can always message in the Orthodox Women of Britain group if you want to, because I think you're on that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I've got some other, I've got another question, Malanga. So, Deborah, thank you. Did you Did you struggle to choose the 4 miracles? Or did you feel like they were the only obvious 4 ones that you wanted to talk about?
I think they were just the ones that I found myself going back to in my thoughts again and again. I think probably I'd be interested if you put it in the chat. You know, there may be other ones. People say, "Oh, why did you pick that one and not that one?" But there were just aspects of them, and sometimes they weren't even the central aspects that just struck me.
Well, I'm going to look at all of them with a microscope now. Thank you.
It was very good to hear the psychological angle on it. You know, that was really so good to have that in-depth look at it.
Yes, I think we're all going to look at it slightly differently now. It's been very, very useful indeed.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you
for listening.
I will be letting you all know who our next speaker is in due course, which will be in the new year, of course. And hopefully we'll have less drama with setting up the meeting next time.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Bye bye.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you very much.